Boy, oh boy. You won't believe. It is unbelievable the talent that went into this record. Or maybe it is believable because it was a great song. And I appreciate it now more than ever, particularly since I researched this record and found out who wrote it and the people who played on it. Well, the instrument that gave it its signature sound, I'll get into all that in just a minute. Peabo Bryson at number 33 on my fancy playlist, June 4th, 1984. Up one from 34. It will go a lot higher than 33 on this fancy playlist. If ever you're in my arms again. Peabo Bryson had a smooth, a sensitive, soulful voice. Kind of along the lines of, say, Luther Vandross, Al Jarreau, Tommy Edwards. Going back to the 50s on Tommy Edwards, it's all in the game. And what was it? Talk to Her Please, Mr. Sun, back in 1959 by Tommy Edwards and Nat King Cole, sort of along those lines. And from South Carolina, put out his first album in 1976. 1977, he had his first soul hit, and the song was called, I wrote it down, I forgot the name of the record, Feel the Fire. It's from the album Reach for the Sky. That was in 1977. Now we get to the album Straight from the Heart in 1984. He's done a lot of duets. Duetted with Celine Dion, Regina Belle, Debbie Gibson, Melissa Manchester, Roberta Flack. Did a nice song with Regina Belle called Whole New World back in the early 90s. But the one that I like by him, you might remember a song he did with Kenny G called By the Time the Night Is Over. Boy, that was some smooth, quiet storm jams right there. By the time the night is over, getting snuggy with your honey with that record right there, with that song. Came out back in 1993, I think around the summer of 1993. Now, the songwriters. We'll start with number one, number two, number three. Not in any particular order, but it's just the way I got it down on my notes. Cynthia Weil co-wrote this song. Cynthia Weil, along with Barry Mann, were among the songwriting geniuses of the 60s. They co-wrote, these two, Cynthia Weil and Barry Mann, they wrote Hungry by Paul Revere and the Raiders. Kicks, We Gotta Get Out of This Place, which was written for the Righteous Brothers, but it was done by Eric Burdon and the Animals. They had to hit with it that fabulous summer of 1965 back then. They wrote Bless You. Bless You, the song Bless You, Tony Orlando, back in 1961, back before he was with Don, 16, 17 years old at the time, he might have been younger, back in 1961, Bless You, they wrote that, wrote on Broadway by the Drifters. And they wrote some things in the 80s too. They wrote Never Gonna Let You Go by Sergio Mendes, and then there's Tom Snow, he co-wrote the song too. If Ever You're in My Arms Again. It's a couple of his credits. Three of his credits, Deeper Than the Night by Olivia Newton-John. He co-wrote that song. Big hit for Olivia Newton-John, or moderate-sized hit for her back in 1979. But then, oh my goodness. He teamed up with Dean Pitchford, and he wrote You Should Hear How She Talks About You by Melissa Manchester. They wrote that in 82, and then they wrote Let's Hear It for the Boy back in 1984. Dean Pitchford and Tom Snow. I might have said Tony Snow. It was Tom Snow co-wrote Let's Hear It for the Boy. My goodness. Now, the other guy, the other person who wrote this record, If Ever You're in My Arms Again, a guy named Michael Masser. Or was it Masser? I'll just pronounce it as Masser. Masser started out, he wanted to be a songwriter, but instead he went to law school. He got married, became a stockbroker, but he never gave up that dream. He just wanted to be a songwriter so bad. It ached. He met a guy named, I believe his name was Johnny Mercer, who encouraged him to go ahead and become a songwriter. And he did by the time he was 31. Around the late 60s, early 70s, I can't give you the exact year of this particular bit, but Michael Masser produced a couple of songs. He wrote a couple of songs. He had a tape of a couple of his songs. that he delivered to Bones Howe. Bones Howe was a major producer back in the 60s. He produced hit records by the associations, including Wendy. Bones Howe was producing hit records by the Fifth Dimension, Sweet Blindness, Up and Away. I believe he produced that one. And last night I didn't get to sleep at all. He produced all those records. Michael Masser knew what he was doing. He was going to the big time, the big top, baby. Bones Howe. And he was told, well, just leave your tape. Bones Howe listened to the tape. He liked what he heard. And Bones Howe suggested to Michael Masser, how would you like to get together with Jerry Goffin? Jerry Goffin, a big songwriter, co-wrote songs with Carole King back in the 60s, early 60s. And they wrote together. These two guys wrote Turn Around to Me by the Fifth Dimension. Probably just an album cut by the Fifth Dimension, but it was his first recorded thing that he wrote, Michael Masser. Then guess what happened? Michael Masser got another huge break. He met Motown executive Suzanne DePasse, Suzanne DePasse, and she encouraged him to write some songs. He teamed up with Ron Miller, another fabulous Motown songwriter, and they wrote Touch Me in the Morning by Diana Ross. And that blew the can wide open. Some of the other songs that Michael Masser had either wrote or co-wrote, It's My Turn by Diana Ross, Greatest Love of All by Whitney Houston, though done earlier by George Benson, a slightly different version by George Benson. Glenn Medeiros, Nothing's Gonna Change My Love for You, I believe that was the name of the record. That came out in 1987. He wrote that one, co-wrote that one. Miss You Like Crazy by Natalie Cole, co-written by Michael Masser. Michael Masser wrote another song that Peabo Bryson did. Tonight I Celebrate My Love. Peabo Bryson and Roberta Flack, written by Jerry Goffin and Michael Masser, produced by Michael Masser. Michael Masser, he co-wrote this song, If Ever You're in My Arms Again. He co-wrote it with Cynthia Weil and Tom Snow, both brilliant songwriters, and he produced this song. Now, the instrument that I think gave this song its signature sound, that clean, that beautiful synthesizer, a sensitive, almost sensitive vibes from this synthesizer. There was a guy named Randy Kirby, I believe it's Kirby. Let me double check because I don't want to do another take on this video. Yeah, Randy Kerber. I'm sorry, it was Randy Kerber. Randy Kerber, he played the piano, acoustic piano, I believe, but he also played a synthesizer. Randy Kerber, he's played on a lot of movie themes. He's a studio musician. He's played with various artists, and it's estimated that he's played on 800 movie themes behind the scenes as a session, but keyboard player. Well, he played something called a Yamaha DX7, which you hear on this record. The Yamaha DX7 was the first, I believe, the first commercially accessible digital synthesizer. Produced in 1983 through 1989, it eventually sold 200,000 of these things were sold, which is pretty significant. It was not, from what I read, little I read about it, it was not easy to be played. You had to know what you were doing. It had a number of presets on this synthesizer, a digital display on this synthesizer. Well, apparently Randy Kerber, he mastered this thing. Now, it was featured on quite a few songs made back in the 80s, this Yamaha DX7, this digital synthesizer. There was a preset on this synthesizer called the Bass 1. BASS Bass 1 preset. That Bass 1 preset, it was featured. It was used on the song Take On Me by Aha. It was used on Danger Song by Kenny Loggins and Fresh by Good Guy. It was used. Yeah, this synthesizer, it was whipping it back and forth. Now, there was another preset on this thing called E Piano 1. and it was used on quite a few power ballads. I'm wondering if that preset was used on this record by Peabo Bryson, but I'm not sure. But I had to share it with you. I had to speculate on it with you because I like to talk about these instruments, although it's very technical. I'm just giving you just the surface of this thing, the broad brush, not even the broad brush. So there it is. Whew, my goodness. I'm pushed. Thanks for watching this video if you watched it in its entirety or even half of it. So there it is. Sort of a history of Peabo Bryson's song at number 33 on my fantasy playlist. If ever you're in my arms again. Fantasy playlist of June 4th. Trying to catch my breath. 1984.